Hello, everyone. My name is Krisha Moeller, and I'm an alum. I graduated from SDSU's LDT program back in 2015. A little bit about myself. I actually used to be a freelance web developer back in the day, and I became a digital media and web design teacher at high school level for many years. And then after I graduated the program, I am now the regional EdTech specialist for a system of independent study charter schools out here in San Diego, meaning that I handle the online programs in EdTech for that school. Side note, I'm also doing Girls Who Code Club pretty soon too, so that'll be pretty fun for me as well. So today I'm going to be, my first time doing this presentation, I'm going to be discussing how to use brief programming in Google Sheets to bridge SIS and EdTech systems. EdTech meaning like an LMS system or G Suite. So one of the things I always like to start with, with the why, and then why is this something that would be helpful for anybody who works in EdTech. And so a little bit of a story actually about this. Here was my why essentially. So a while back we pitched a LMS for our learning management system for our network of charter schools, and we're a pretty expansive network of charter schools. We have about 40,000 kids. And so what I was told was, sure, you can do an LMS, but can you go ahead and just make a bridge to make sure we have 40,000 kids who are regularly updated in the system, regularly inputted when they enroll, and also have their classes automatically assigned? I was like, okay, I'll see what I can do. So I went back in, and this is where I learned how to do this. So my why, though, is very similar to, I think, the why of most people work in EdTech. So there's 3 reasons why this is useful information that I'll be presenting today. So one, you have an SIS or a student information system, but your student information system does not come with a bridge out of the box for whatever LMS or EdTech platform you're trying to connect to. And it can be any number of online softwares that you're trying to use there. So that would happen with us. So we actually work with something called School Pathways as our SIS system, and the LMS that I was initially merging or integrating was Moodle. And there was no out-of-the-box bridge between those 2 systems. Second issue you might have is there is an out-of-the-box bridge, but the out-of-the-box bridge that exists does not meet the demands of your school's unique data practices. So for example, we are like a year-round school. We pretty much never end. Kids can enroll, because we're independent study, they can enroll pretty much any time. This means that a lot of out-of-the-box bridges that come between SIS systems and other platforms don't always do what we need it to do out of the box. And so this is another problem we may come into. And then 2, and this is probably the most common problem, the teacher trying to accomplish this merging between a SIS and LMS or other EdTech system does not have access to the SIS data or the information of permissions. So for example, in my case, Moodle is an open source platform, so I had access to the back end of Moodle, but they would not relinquish access to me to the back end of School Pathways, because we don't own School Pathways. They're their own company and SIS system. So I couldn't exactly build an integrated bridge in the back end of their system unless I got my permissions, for example. So in short, the scenario is you got a student information system, you want to get your kids into another system or put them in another system, and you're trying to find an easy way to make sure that you can do that. So that's where this information comes into place. So of all things, Google Sheets, which is free to anybody who has a Gmail account, came to the rescue for me. And so here's, in general, the system that I created for handling this problem. And this actually worked with 40,000 as well. So essentially, make a Google Sheet with about 3 tabs. You have one tab where you drop in your data. This is a blank tab, so you spit out a .csv file or a batch of your student's information from SIS, which I'll talk about in a second. You drop it into this converter sheet. Then you have a tab you see at the bottom that converts. This is where the magic happens. This is where you put in those lines of code to convert your student's data from how it came out in the SIS system into something that the LMS system or the other EdTech system can actually recognize and handle for a batch upload. And the last one is that the download LMS file. I say LMS here again, it could be any EdTech system, but that's kind of where it spits out. And then you just download that, upload it to your system, and then boom, all your kids are in a format that the new system can recognize. So it's really just a 3-step or a 3-tab system that I created here, but it worked really well. So here's how the overall process works. You basically just go to your SIS system, click to download the student information as a batch CSV file, drop it in or just plug it into the converter. The converter converts it, and then you just download the .csv file that's been converted and you upload it to your LMS system. So it's a 4-step process that takes me about 10 minutes. And this works with pretty much almost any number of student accounts that you need. So, and the one thing I'm not going to cover in the demonstration today, but that's very, very helpful for this, is let's say, you know, it's a 4-step process. You still have to run it manually, right? Download, drop in, download, upload, right? It's a 4-step process. But let's say you don't even want to be bothered with that. Once you have a converter system set up like this, you can use something called a macros task recorder. Has anybody ever heard of a macros task recorder? Okay. Basically, all it does is it records your tasks for you. And there's a ton of free versions of this out there. So basically, you record your 4-step process one time, and then from then, like Friday, you can push the button once, and it'll run everything for you. Upload and batch update and batch enroll your students into whatever system that you're trying to put your kids into. Also, some macros systems will also allow you to schedule these. So rather than doing even the one button thing, you can set it to run at certain periods of time during the day. You just have to have an internet connection, obviously, to get it done. But if you have like any backup laptop, you can just set all your reports to run the back end, and that would mean you don't even have to touch anything. So every day, you can have your students' accounts updated, imported, automatically disabled for those who disenrolled, and put into the right sections where they need to be, or enrollments where they need to be. And you don't have to really think about it once it's done. So this presentation, I'm not sure if I hand out the link at the beginning, but if you wanted to copy down this link, this is a take-home presentation as well. All my information and all my detailed information is in there. So if you wanted to screenshot it really quickly, more than welcome to. So I try to build all my presentations as take-homes. So I kind of do the opposite of what you're supposed to do. I have a lot of information on here, and then I speak the rest, usually. But this is that way for the purpose that you can take this home and then kind of delve a little closer into some of those codes and so forth that I covered here. No, sorry, I didn't want to get it. Sorry. Whoops, sorry. There you go. My apologies. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So I do have a link on here with 17 free macros tools. Some of them also have schedulers as well embedded in there, but they all basically do the same thing. It lets you record your process once, and then once you run it, it'll do all of this for you. Okay, so ingredients. What do you actually need in order for this to work? So you really only need 3 things. The first is you need to have a SIS system, or student information system, that will allow you to download your students' data as a .csv file. The good news is virtually every SIS system out there will let you do this. So they pretty much all will let you download a report as a .csv. Similarly, you need the platform you're importing your students' accounts into needs to also be capable of something called batch uploads. And again, most of them will allow you to do this. Including Moodle and pretty much all of them, really. But basically, it just means that you can take a .csv file in reverse, you can upload it, and it will auto import all the accounts that are in that sheet into the new system. So basically, you need an SI system that can spit out a .csv of student data, and then the system you're importing into needs to be able to handle an upload of a .csv system. But again, most of them will let you do this. Side note, if you, for any reason, are in a situation where you cannot get access to your SIS systems reports like that, if you don't have the permissions level at your school hierarchy, then you just have to find another way to get that .csv file. It could either be, like some people use Google surveys, or they just find a way to collect it as something that can be downloaded as a .csv. So there are other ways to do it as well. And lastly, really, you just need a Gmail account, which is free. All right. So on the demo, if any of you have a computer, you're welcome to do this with me. Otherwise, I am going to be jumping between the screens, so you don't have to. But if you wanted to do this with me, you can actually see the coding that I did in this template. There's really just 2 steps here. There's this, which is this link here, and this is the starter SIS file with dummy student information. And I realize you say the dummy meaning it's fake, not dummy meaning the quality of the students. But here's the dummy, the dummy student data that I created. And this is essentially what our SIS system would normally spit out. I tried to input some things like that would come up, like a student has been withdrawn. As you can see, it's a little small on the screen, but it includes everything from birthday, fake birthdays, home phones, pretty much everything that I would need. And also, this is the state ID number over here. So this is what you would download. If you wanted to open it, you would open it up and then just download it from here. So this is what normally would spit out from our SIS system, something like this in this format. So then the next link over here, this is the converter template. So the good news is I've done all the formulas for you. Now granted, you know, it won't work perfectly if you're not going from school pathway specifically to Moodle, but the formulas in there are very easy to manipulate based on just kind of looking at them and seeing where you want to plug and play with your sensors. So I'll show you how that works. So here's my system. So you notice it looks very dull right now, but I have the 3 tabs down here I mentioned before: the drop-in SIS file tab, the converter sheet file tab, which is where all the formulas are, and it kind of converts everything so that Moodle can accept. And then the final output file here, which is where it's going to spit out my file that I can then batch upload to my elements in this case. I also added a 4th, and this is just a little special one, because a question came up in one of my presentations earlier. Well, how would I filter it? So I can do these formulas to batch code everything. Maybe I only want to upload the students from this one school to this one system, or just from these 2 schools, for example. So this is a filtering file that will allow, like, for example, the system here shows students we have are fake students from Riverside and San Diego, and so I made one that says it'll filter them out by just the students located in San Diego. And then that's a way that I managed to just upload the students like a local pilot post. So let me show you how this works. So basically, this is my drop-in file. All I have to do is you go to the first tab and you just go to File, Import, and I import, upload, and I'm going to upload that SIS system file I got. And these instructions are also on the PowerPoint as well, if you want to look at it later. But basically, to replace the current sheet, so I just import this data on the current sheet here. So boom, dropped in all of my SIS data. And then the conversions, boopity boopity boop, happen on this file, and then back here, you see it's running it right now. But once it finishes running, all of this will be populated in a format that Moodle can understand. So, oh, there it goes, doing its little magic. There we go. And this is the .csv file format that Moodle would accept. So let's see, it's populating it. Let's see. I'm really excited with the username. But when I say converting information, basically what I mean is this. So let's say your student information system, it probably has your student's names. It probably has things like, you know, zip codes or state ID numbers, things like that, but it may not have usernames for anything already ingrained into it. So converting in this case means like you can set a default password for students. You can create an email for them, you create a username, so these are generated usernames and everything, and then this is what the students would then use to log into the new system. There we go. So, okay. So how did I initially start making this? So the first tab here is really just a blank tab that you just drop in information to. The one thing that you would need to be prepared, though, is you would need to prepare both the LMS or the edtech system you're about to upload to, so it can handle like groupings, for example. So one of the things that I did here is I already created groupings for certain types of classes, so I could do auto enrollments, groupings for certain types of regions, or how do we break down students. So I'd have to prep the system first, so the upload file knows what it means when I say put it here or put it there, right? The second thing I'd have to do is, if there's anything special, and like Moodle, for example, Moodle has a field value archive right here. So when you download a .csv from Moodle with the intent to use this as a template where you would input your data to upload it later, you would have to make sure you understand what these field values are. So for example, they have the whole line here. Like, you know, email is the name of the field value that Moodle accepts for email, unsurprisingly. But there are other things too. Like for example, what's a really good example? These for course enrollments. So course 1, type 1, role 1, group 1. This is all stuff that Moodle understands means a certain type of thing, right? And so I have one down here, like, oh, deleted accounts. Okay, so for example, an activated account in Moodle means number 1, and a 0 means it should be deactivated. And that seems specific to Moodle, for example. But that's what I mean by field values. So you have to pull out what those field values are. So I know, for example, on this system, as you can see over here, the final one that I created, there we go, it shows me these are all activated, or sorry, 0 is activated, 1 is deactivated. So you see here, these are deactivated students, suspended students, these are activated. That's something, again, that's a field value specific to Moodle, but you want to know what your LMS or edtech system you're going to, what those field values are before you do that. And then you just create this template here, and then you get ready to code it on the converter sheet. All right. So taking the show on the road. So I've already included all these formulas as a takeaway on this presentation for you. Just click on the link and you can dig out those formulas. And I'll show you also where they're located. But take a show on the road. A couple things to note. The formulas are in there, but if you're going to edit a formula, just a couple things to look out for. Make sure you're not affecting like opening and closing brackets. So try to keep it exactly the same. Just change the part that's specific to what you're looking for, like which cell you're working in or so forth. And just keep in mind, try not to and save a copy of the formula before you edit it in case you make a mistake. Probably the best thing to say there. But also in real life, there may be many information or data conversions that you have to accomplish, and you're not sure what formula will do it. So it's not a formula maybe I provided to you. So if this happens, honestly, just Google how do I ... in Google Sheets. And so I do that. Like I've been doing this for years, and I still have to Google for formulas all the time. So don't worry about it. So odds are, if there's something you're trying to figure out, like how do I get the student's username to be in this format, or how do I get it to work this way, or whatever? How do I get it so the system recognizes that if it's disabled after this date, that it should be disabled, and whatever the case is. You can always Google those questions, and there's a huge free Google Sheets coding and support forum out there that will almost always give you the code that you're looking for, and you just have to adjust it to your needs. And they can help you through that as well if you're not super tech savvy. So yeah, so I basically uploaded that sheet. You already saw the conversion process. So let's take a look actually at what I did here. So before I look at that tab, I'll talk about how I created the usernames, for example. So I mentioned FERPA here. One of the things I learned through this process, well, I learned a lot about FERPA, but per FERPA, usernames cannot, legally, usernames for students cannot contain identifying information about the students. So things like, social security numbers, state ID numbers, zip codes, birthdays, and things like that, right? However, if it's inconvenient to use a student's local ID number and a username for any reason, like they're subject to change, they're too long, whatever the case is, then here's something you can do. So this comes up with us a lot. We have local ID numbers for students in our local SIS system. But because we're independent study charter school, a lot of our kids move around a lot. We have a high transit population. And so those local ID numbers can change at any given minute depending on where the kid shows up, basically. And so this is a little bit unique to us, but in general, maybe the local ID number isn't going to work for you, so what can you do? Here's what I decided to do. So you can create a formula that uses an identifying number on a student's account, one that won't change or will stay constant, like your state ID number, to generate a 2 to 3 digit number for the username or email, as long as you keep this formula a secret and do not upload the original identifying number to the student's account anywhere where it will be public, like a profile page. So here's an example. What I did here on the converter sheet, and again, this is where you find all the formulas that I did. So if you go to the first line, row 2, every code that I use is up here. So check it out. So, and then if you're wondering what these codes do, that's actually included in this PowerPoint as a take-home. So it actually tells you what every line, what every code in that sheet does. And then you can go and find those codes here and then just copy paste them over from your own.
Can you make your screen a little bigger for a second?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Here, you're right. There you go. No problem. There we go. Is that better? Mm-hmm. Perfect. So I wanted to create a username. So here's what I did. Took the first username and I made it lowercase and script. This code basically will work on everything. You just have to change, like this is referencing a very specific column. So you change the column it's referencing, but this is a general stripping formula. You can just copy paste anywhere. It'll pull out any weird characters, is basically what it's doing. So it's saying weird characters, go away, is what it's saying, and make it lowercase. This formula says, give me the first initial of a kid's name. And this is, again, the same thing that you can do anywhere. So okay, give me the first initial. Lower name also, last name also lowercase, strip it. Here's the student's state ID number. Now, this is an identifying number. I cannot use this in a student's username because it's considered as an identifying social security number. I can't throw it anywhere. So I would not upload this to Moodle or anywhere in a student's profile page, right? But here's what I can do with it, because this number will never change no matter what school the kid goes to. I'm going to say, hey, give me the first number of that, right? First number of that state ID number, the last number, add them together, and then multiply it by the middle number. See what I'm saying? So basically, I created a code that only I know, where it's taking like the first number, the last number, adding it to the center number, and then multiplying, whatever the case is. So this last 3-digit number that pops up will always be the same, no matter where the kid goes. Nobody knows where it came from, how I work that magic, right? So it's not identifying in of itself unless they knew my formula, which I don't share with anybody. So now I go first initial plus, so here's what happened here. It's saying first initial plus the last name, lowercase, plus that special number that I created, and boom. I have a username that will always stay the same no matter what school that kid shows up, which is awesome. And the same thing can be done here. So here we have weird codes for some of our schools. Again, these are fake schools that I'm using here. So like Mountain High girls, no, Mountain High is not a cool school, but you know, I'm saying these are fake ones. But what I can do is say, if you see this code for this school, give me this domain name and make it the email. So now I can auto-generate emails for our students based on which school code they belong to. I can create student portal websites out of this. Again, these are all the formulas for that. And this is what I mean by Moodle will have certain things where they'll say, like, which center does this kid belong to, which region does this kid go to, and then I can put them into the right cohorts. So now here's cohort 1 for the Murrieta students and the Chula Vista students and yada yada and so forth. Who's their principal based on the SIS data? Who's their teacher, their homeroom teacher? I even get their birthday in there and then find out what age they are. So if you have certain parameters for students that are below 18 and you want to make it so all students who are below 18 have less access to certain things than those who are 18 and over, you can include that in there as well. All of this is included for you in there. Oh, okay, gotcha, sorry. So the formulas are in here, and that's pretty much it. So if you see these codes on these slides will tell you what those lines of code do, and that's it. So if you have any questions or you want to email, I do business cards. Yeah, let me know how I can help you.
Could you read, although URLs are never meant to be uttered aloud, could you read that for the archive?
Absolutely. So the URL for this resource is a bit.ly. It's bit.ly/bridging systems with Google Sheets SDSU, and it is bit.ly is case sensitive, so you have to do capital B, S, W, G, S, and SDSU. I'll try to zoom in on it for the presentation. See it. Let me see. There we go. Hopefully that shows up a little better on the presentation. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a few minutes for let the next speaker set up, but if you have questions for Krisha.
Do you ever have to go through the data manually to check for errors or duplications or anything that might cause issues during the import?
What I do is I do go through, every time I build any kind of coding sheet, I will do that first. Like the first few times I upload it, I'll also do the manual way side by side to make sure the system is catching those errors. And if there are errors that come up, I can just then recode the sheet and make it aware or cognizant of what those errors and what to do with it. So an example would be students who don't have a state ID number because they're foreign exchange students, for example, they haven't gotten one. So then if I do it a couple times manually along with the sheet, then I go, oh, this is an issue I hadn't thought of, and I see why this is happening. And then I can just add some lines of code as, if you see this, do this with it in the future, and so forth. So, but once you do it a couple times, you shouldn't really have to check for errors at any point.
What happens to duplicate like user IDs? Is that possible?
It's that was actually why I used the state ID. It's feasible for that to happen, but the likelihood that a student will have, because it's very common to have the first name and the same last name in the same city, but the state ID numbers are so long that it's very not likely you would have a student with the same first name, same last name, and then the same first number of their SID and last number of their SID and middle number of their SID. Yeah. And so that's essentially what helps prevent that. So it's still feasible, you know, in theory, but very unlikely. And so usually for stuff that's feasible but so unlikely, I usually say I handle those on a case-by-case basis kind of thing, you know. But in general, once you do it a couple times, you shouldn't have to check for errors.
So I know you said you don't share your formulas with anybody for making the unique number. remember, but I know Google isn't always the most secure system for like, hackers. Do you take any safeguards to make sure that your data is secure?
There is, yeah, so there's a couple ways. So my Google account is our school domain Google account. There are ways you can set the permissions so that like essentially only you in that domain can look at it. But you're right, technically a hacker really could get to anything feasibly. But one of the things that's really nice about Google, and in the way that I'm using it, is that information doesn't stay in Google. It runs the converter and then disappears. And so I don't keep it there. So for example, the static numbers get dropped in, converted, and then what I do when I do the macros recorder is the last step I record is deleting it. So it's fresh for the next run. And that helps it, again, run fresh for the next run, but it also addresses that issue where you don't want that information to be kept there at any given time. In theory, they could still hunt down my formula, but they wouldn't necessarily, that would only give them like one digit and last digit, things like, you know what I'm saying? So it wouldn't necessarily give them that much information on the students. We still do secure. There are other, I can't remember off the top of my head, there is if you're concerned about making sure that G Suite is as FERPA compliant as possible, there actually is a service for that, but I can't remember off the top of my head, but if you email me, I can hunt that one down as well.
Can you write the URL?
Oh, yeah, come on, right up here, yeah. And everything in there.
I'll give you a moment.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the descriptions of what every code that you find that sheet will use, everything's there for.
Our next speaker hasn't arrived yet, so this can. There you are. I didn't recognize you back there. Our next speaker has arrived, so he'll come up now and set up, and we'll start a new recording.
And I have another announcement. We are encouraging